First, I'll be introducing our client, Mohammad Shibli, who will be giving a statement on what happened to him and his family on the night of July 29, 2025, aboard a Delta airplane. Then you will hear from our managing attorney, Ali Awad, on our legal demand against Delta Airlines, and we will then leave space for any questions. So we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Mohammad Shibli.
Hello everyone, my name is Mohammad Shibli. On July 29th, I boarded Delta Flight 0561 along with my wife and 2 children, ages 2 and 4. I sat with our 4-year-old son as my wife sat with our 2-year-old son in different rows. The plane was delayed roughly 20 minutes before takeoff, and during this time, our 2-year-old started crying over water. My wife waited until the plane took off and the front passengers were being served before asking for water for our son. The Delta flight attendant refused, even though she was right next to the galley where the water was stowed. My wife then texted me and told me that my son was crying and that she was refused water. I got up and I went to the back of the plane to ask the same flight attendant for some water. The Delta attendant again refused, using a very disrespectful tone. So at that time, I walked to the front of the plane to a different attendant. They gave me the water and they even apologized for the actions of the other flight attendant. I then walked to the back of the plane to give my wife the water and then immediately returned to my seat to be with my 4-year-old son. Moments later, the same Delta attendant came to our row and asked if I wanted anything to drink. I made it very clear I didn't want anything from her. She insisted and kept leaning towards me, so I asked her to leave me alone. She then asked if I wanted the police to meet me at the gate, insinuating that she was going to have me arrested. I asked her for what? She just ignored me and continued her service. As she walked back and forth to serve our other passengers, she bumped into me with her body. I tried to ignore it, but the passenger in my row, who I'd never met before, could tell that the Delta attendant was provoking me. She even asked me what's her deal, because she knew that was abnormal behavior. The Delta flight attendant then leaned closer to my ear and whispered a very vulgar word to me. The passenger in my row saw the Delta attendant do this. I was shocked and couldn't believe a Delta employee would say such a disgusting word to me, let alone in front of my son. As she walked away, I stood up and verbally responded with a few bad words. It was at that time the Delta attendant took a few steps towards me and struck me with an open palm as hard as she could. I was pleading to other flight attendants that I was just assaulted. To my surprise, the Delta attendant continued to serve other passengers and acted like nothing happened. Finally, other attendants came over and acknowledged me and told her to sit in the back of the plane until we landed. I was trapped on that plane for almost 4 hours. It was painful and embarrassing. And as a father, I looked helpless in front of my son. As a husband, I was humiliated. And as a passenger, I feared for the safety and security for myself and for my family. I demanded that my wife and 2-year-old son come sit closer to me. No one should ever experience physical abuse like this, especially on a plane mid-air with nowhere to go for 4 hours. When we landed in Fresno, I made it very clear I wanted to press charges. I saw law enforcement agents questioning the Delta employee. I don't know whether she was arrested or not. I just know that I was wronged, and I hope Delta will take this opportunity to make it right.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ali Awad, managing attorney and founder at CEO Lawyer Personal Injury Law Firm. You just heard from my client, Mohammad Shibli. And I'm sure, like many of you, when I first heard this story, I thought, there's no way. There is no way that a Delta employee would smack a passenger, let alone on a plane full of passengers mid-air. And I thought, there's got to be more to this story. And there was. You see, on July of 2024, just last year, 2 Delta employees were wearing Palestinian flags, pins on their uniform. And when a customer complained, Delta made an official response on their X account. Their response: they would be terrified of someone wearing a Palestinian flag. Delta, on their official X account, said they would be terrified of someone wearing a Palestinian flag. Why? Because it doesn't reflect their culture. My client's wife is here with us today along with their children, but they decided to not be on camera. I encourage the news reporters to see the shirt that she's wearing. It's the same exact shirt that she was wearing on that plane on July 29th, 2025, which said Palestine on it. But then, in November of 2024, a Delta employee had another altercation. And a U.S. News article states that a Delta employee slashed another employee, a coworker, during a layover in New Orleans. This Delta Airlines flight attendant also stabbed a hotel security guard during that layover. Now that Delta flight attendant is being charged with attempted murder. But then, the literal day before this incident occurred, on July 28th, 2025, ABC News, headline: Delta co-pilot removed from flight after feds stormed the cockpit. That Delta pilot, not the attendant, was charged with a felony and is being held on a $5 million bond right now. And the investigation had been ongoing for multiple months based on this article. So I ask you, is this a single, isolated incident? Or is it a pattern of, 1, clear discrimination against Palestinians, 2, a history of physical violence from Delta employees, and 3, negligent hiring? All of this happened in front of my client's 4-year-old child. And you know, they were on a flight from Atlanta to Fresno, California, a 4-hour flight. They were going to a wedding, his wife's sister's wedding. And during the wedding, his 4-year-old child asked his grandpa, Jiddo, do you also get slapped in the face when you get on a plane? Because my daddy did. Imagine the humiliation, much less the trauma of this 4-year-old child. So today, we are presenting our demand to Delta Airlines, and it's clear and unequivocal. Number 1, every Delta employee in the company must get education and sensitivity training on Palestine. And number 2, at the very least, Delta ruined my client's day. And Delta we demand a day of your profits. We're available for any questions.
Delta released a statement saying that the employee has been suspended and that they are taking the situation seriously. To blame an airline for an action of one of their 100,000 employees, why do you think that deserves a day of their profit?
That's a good question. The question is, to blame Delta for the actions of one employee, is it fair to demand a day of their profits? Well, this case is not about a slap. This case is about everything that Delta has done and continues to do, exhibiting a pattern of recklessness and negligent behavior in their company. We gave you 3 different examples in the past year alone. And might I add that there is a theory called respondeat superior. There's also a theory called pattern negligence. And these are theories of liability where the employee is responsible for the actions through their employer. So Delta is 100% liable for the actions of their employee, and it's further affirmed by the history of negligent behavior.
You had mentioned a tweet from last year. Delta had said that that employee was fired and did not reflect their values. Again, they can have employees who made, so the sensitivity training, you're saying that that is something that they should have so that every employee is understanding the same policies and procedures so things like this don't happen. I just want to understand, because you're taking a lot of other cases that have happened and trying to incorporate it into this to show the pattern of negligence or the pattern of whatever. So what's your stance there? They are taking action when these situations pop up and doing investigations. We don't know what's going to happen in this case. It's less than a month old with the employee. But is it not good that they are investigating and all of that? Don't you want to wait to see what happens with the investigation before? Are you guys file a lawsuit, I guess is the question?
Our senior attorney will be submitting a formal demand this week to Delta Airlines, and we will give them an opportunity to negotiate in good faith. But the question is whether Delta has been doing enough to protect their passengers. And I believe unequivocally, no, they're not doing enough to protect their passengers. They're not doing enough to train their employees. And we didn't have to look too far to see these examples. These 3 examples all happened in the past year alone that have been reported, separate from the ones that may not have been reported. So I think at the very least, if Delta is going to ruin my client's day, we just demand 1 day back from Delta's profits.
Did anyone say anything to you after this happened? And what was the reaction on the plane? Kind of walk us through what that felt like, what happened.
The reaction was that everyone was shocked. In fact, we received affidavits from clients, and if you'd like, I can read you statements from other witnesses. One of them, who was seated directly in front of my client during the flight, and I'm not going to mention the name, this will be left confidential, but it will be a part of our demand letter to Delta Airlines. The reaction from other passengers is as follows, and I quote, "I was present on Delta flight DL-0561 departing from Atlanta, Georgia to Fresno, California on July 29, 2025. I was watching videos on my phone with both AirPods in to pass during the flight. My AirPods have decent noise cancellation, so I could hear some loud noises like the plane engines, but most other noises were drowned out. As I am watching, a flight attendant with a beverage cart is walking through, and I get water and some apple juice. As she gets to the row behind me and across from me, I hear her talking to someone but cannot distinguish what they are saying at all. That is when I heard a very loud smack sound, and I immediately took my right earbud out and looked behind me to see the flight attendant and a man yelling at each other. It's important to note that my client did not physically retaliate. Instead, he chose to calm down and sit in humiliation for another 4 hours on that flight. The response from the witnesses that saw this, they were just as shocked as all of you are. This is unforgivable behavior. Any other questions?
Do you have a dollar amount about what 1 day of profit is or what you're demanding from Delta and how long they have to respond to this before you would consider other action?
Sure. Delta, the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of Delta, recently issued a statement about their quarter earnings. Delta is expecting $2 billion in profit in just last quarter. This translates over to $20 million in 1 day of profits.
And then timeline if they don't respond to your legal demand.
Delta will have 30 days to respond to our demand upon receipt of the demand letter. It will be reviewed and signed and sent by my senior trial attorney, Nathan Kratzer, as well as my associate attorney, Dia Ajetta.
To your knowledge, the President Police arrest that flight attendant?
To my knowledge, the FBI is involved. The FBI is aware of this incident, and they are currently investigating. We do not know if the flight attendant had been arrested or is being charged currently, but we look forward to working with law enforcement agents to hold her accountable. Any other questions? This will conclude our press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for watching ANF Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and your community stories, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch us on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. To join the conversation on YouTube Live, visit our channel and hit subscribe. You can also listen to the Atlanta News First podcast by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.